8. I'd like to start off by saying that I've always considered myself fairly open sexually. It's very rare that I say no to things in that area. I will at least hear a person out. I once agreed to download the Imperial March to have sex to after the guy I was dating read an article that said it was in the top 5 soundtracks to get it onto. But there was a time when even I didn't understand everything that came at me, when I was young and naive. Well, let me take that back, because with every sexual path I cross, that young girl who thinks sex is going to be all unicorns and rainbows is still in there somewhere. When I met Ishmael, it had only been a year since I lost my virginity in the classiest of ways, on a bunk bed, being pounded like a jackhammer, staring silently at the ceiling while wondering if it was going to be over soon because I had accounting homework to do. I know it may sound backwards, but I specifically chose someone to complete that deed with that I didn't know very well, and who wouldn't want a continued relationship. I knew it wasn't going to be magical or anything to write home to Mom about. I knew it was going to be awkward and painful, so I definitely wanted it to be a hit-it-and-quit-it situation. So when Ishmael came along, I was new in the game, but still willing to hear someone out and experience new things. And we did just that, or so I thought. But if the internet has taught me anything about life, it's that you can have consistent sex with someone and not really know them. We dated roughly for 6 months, but after 6 months, I felt things had run their course, and so had he. We still had enough respect for each other to stay friends, which is something that the positive Polly in me hopes that I can have after all my relationships. We would hang out ever so often, usually with other people around, because even though we ended things, we still needed that cushion to realize that. So one night, Ishmael and his cousin came over to hang out and play video games. I most certainly didn't think this night would end with my first experience with fetishism, especially the kind where you're not introduced to the fetish before it happens to you. It would also be the last night that I would ever see Ishmael. I don't like to brag. Yes, I do. But I've always been very skilled at GoldenEye, also known as the greatest Nintendo 64 game ever invented. Not the sexual position. In my younger years, when I lived with my parents, the only time we ever spent together was to play this game specifically. Yes, my family time was spent trying to kill each other in a first-person shooter game. And I'll say this, we generally argued less when this was part of our week. So that night, Ishmael and his cousin came over, and we spent 2 very emasculating hours playing GoldenEye before I decided it was time for Grandma to go to bed. I left the boys with a whole, you can keep playing, here's some blankets, sleep on the couch, leave whenever, lock the door behind you speech. I realize now that was a mistake. It's important to the story that you know how I sleep. For those who have slept in a bed with me or know me in any sense, you would know that I sleep in the corner of my bed where the wall is, in a ball, covered in my own drool, with the cover for the most part over my head and my feet sticking out. I'm very much a nester. It's also known that it doesn't take me long to fall asleep, solidly, without much movement or sound, except for the occasional sleep fart. So, knowing this information, you could form a very strategic plan against me while sleeping. Not that I'm saying you should. So I was in a state of hypnagogia when I felt it, a tug at my sock. I was pretty sure it was just a dream, so I ignored it. Several minutes passed and I felt it again, a tug at my sock. By the second tug, I started thinking, oh hey, this may not be a dream. I lay there for a minute, still somewhat asleep, when I realized on the third tug, it was Ishmael. He was slowly trying to take off my sock in a way that wouldn't wake me up. Instead of announcing, hey weirdo, I'm awake. What are you about to do to my foot, Dahmer? I decided that since I had bought the ticket at one point, I was going to see where this ride would take me. So I pretended to sleep while he slowly tried to slither off my sock. This lasted roughly 20 minutes. And then he began on my other foot. Oh geez, I thought, how long is this going to take? Get to the point. After another 25 minutes of pretending to sleep, he finally got my other sock off. As I mentioned, I generally sleep with the covers over my head, but not to the point where I can't see. I had just enough window to the dark world of my room that I finally figured out where this was going. Flashes. The only thing I could see after my socks came off, he was taking pictures of my feet. He got 10 minutes worth of photos of my feet before the flashing stopped. And at no point did I announce I was awake. I was stunned. Never during our relationship did he ask or even seem remotely interested in my feet in any way. I would have gladly supported this fetish. Here's a visual. I worked 40 hours on my feet and not always in socks. And he had put so much effort into not waking me to get my socks off that I was willing to let him have it. Why not? Maybe it was something that not even he was willing to admit yet. He took great care not to wake me as he slipped out of my room. And the only thing I could think was, dear whatever force is out there, please let him be gone when I wake up. The next morning, the god of Janus that I had prayed to the night before had failed me. Ishmael and his cousin weren't gone. I got up and there they were, right where I'd left them on the couch. Rather than saying what I wanted to say, so, how was jacking off to my feet last night? I started to form a plan in my head of how I could get them out of the house so that I could tell everyone what had just happened to me. I never said I was mature. So I went with, hey guys, I have to leave for work in an hour, even though I didn't work that day. Who wants pancakes? Who does that? Who makes pancakes for the person who violated her feet without her consent not even 7 hours prior? I do. So after an awkward breakfast with limited conversation on my part, they finally left. After that day, I never again responded to Ishmael's numerous texts and attempts to hang out with me. Perhaps I was being too harsh. Maybe I should have been an adult and said, hey, I know what you did last night, and it made me feel uncomfortable. I should have also given back his pants that I promised to alter for him, but I'm sorry, that's a risk that you take when you're dating. The risk of never getting your stuff back. When I end things, I consider that hard-to-find Ryan Gosling VHS mine. It's called a consolation prize. So every now and then I get a Facebook friend request from him, and I always promptly decline. But I'll always wonder what happened to those pictures and how many times my feet have been viewed and used for foot fetish fulfillment. Thanks.